Hello, my name's Gary White, and today I'm going to talk with you a little bit about emotional intelligence and how it can impact the learning of junior high and high school students, and particularly with some insight as to how it can impact the learning of the students at Rolla Junior High and High School, where I teach. So there are several factors that influence a student's learning throughout the course. We've gone through the process of learning about developmental stages and how those developmental stages influence the type of learning that a student is doing at a given point in time. We've talked about intelligence as a factor in student learning, about measuring an intelligence, and about how the format and forms by which we measure intelligence can be limited sometimes to measuring things like visual spatial or linguistic intelligence, and maybe not actually capturing all of the different types of intelligences that can be noticed or that can be present in the students that we're teaching. We've also talked about personality and how personality can influence a student and how they're motivated in their learning process, and how that motivation can impact their performance on a day-to-day basis. And so we also have looked at learning style and how a student likes to be able to take that information in as they're in a class. So this next step is talking about emotional intelligence and the role that it plays for a student in the classroom. So emotional intelligence deals with the ability of a student to regulate the emotions that are created by the inputs that are given by their environment. So an example of that would be the emotion to maybe react in anger when someone around a student expresses something that they don't like. And so within the brain functions to mitigate that expression of anger by applying logic to the situation and allowing a student to override their expression of anger because of their understanding of how that expression of anger might negatively impact them, let's say in a classroom environment or an environment with other people around them. So there are a couple of different layers to emotional intelligence. Those different layers were expressed by Terry Bradbury in his video regarding emotional intelligence. So the first competence is called personal intelligence, and really personal intelligence, as Terry described it, relates to a person's ability to govern their own emotions internally. So the way that this emotional intelligence component manifests itself in the classroom is with a student who shows the ability to display patience, a student who is able to self-direct well, a student who's also able to show a good measure of self-control. So in that anger scenario that I spoke about earlier, a student with a high level of personal emotional intelligence would be able to control that anger in that situation. And it can also manifest itself in a certain level of academic persistence, understanding the need to continue on in a course of action so that a student can see success. And so one of the things I really love about working at Rolla School District 217 is that we utilize a platform called Summit Learning. And at the core of Summit Learning are a number of habits of success. And it's been very interesting for me in engaging with this class to see how those habits of success really line up with some of the concepts of things like intelligence and motivation, and particularly in this category, emotional intelligence. So one of the habits of success that we work to teach in Summit Learning is self-direction, encouraging students to continue on, or to set goals for themselves and to achieve things in their own path, and also persist in academic endeavors that might be slightly challenging. So I really feel like at our district, particularly using Summit, we're encouraging the growth of emotional intelligence in our students, which is quite encouraging. The next level of emotional intelligence is interpersonal intelligence. So as Terry Bradbury describes in his video, this interpersonal intelligence really manifests itself in an ability to recognize emotions and in others, and to work together with those other people. People with high levels of emotional intelligence related to the interpersonal category are going to show high levels of ability to conduct teamwork. They're going to show high levels of empathy, and they're going to be really connected with the other students that they work with on a day-to-day basis. And so these are things, again, that I see within the habits of success encouraged by the Summit Learning platform that we use. Things like connectedness is one of the habits of success. Cultivating a connection with your fellow students and with your teachers in a community of learning is something that we look to encourage in the mentor check-ins that I do with the students that are part of my mentor group each week. And also encouraging students to work through the process of teamwork so that they're developing the interpersonal skills and this interpersonal intelligence that'll help them be successful in years to come. And I say successful in years to come because as was discussed in Terry's video, the top performers in many organizations show high levels of emotional intelligence. And so those kind of mid-level management positions are places where emotional intelligence is really key. Some of the things that support the development of emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence is present in certain gene expression. But encouragingly, as was detailed by Richard Davidson in his video, The Heart-Brain Connection, as children, as we learn and develop, it's actually possible to continue the process of neurogenesis, where we're creating new neural connections. And he made the point that it's possible for an active pursuit of development and emotional intelligence can actually have an impact on the gene expression of those students who are making that effort. So although genetics are a component, the interesting thing is that more key than anything is the environment in which students are learning or developing that emotional intelligence. So and so we'll talk about what those elements are that help to support or detract from emotional intelligence development. So things that have positive impacts and allow for some of the positive impacts of emotional intelligence, that it allows for creation of new learning. So like I talked about, that neurogenesis, it allows for an increase in brain connections, increased number of neurons, and it can create a deeper connection with the material that's being learned in the class. So some of the inhibitors, the things that actually kind of put the brakes on that neurogenesis and the growth, as discussed by Richard Davidson in that same video, The Heart-Brain Connection. So increased levels of cortisol. So things like high levels of stress, and this is something Travis Bradbury mentioned as being something that inhibits, but also that Richard Davidson mentioned. High levels of stress are created by unsafe environments, and they create a large level of cortisol, and that cortisol keeps students from being able to create those connections and kind of format that learning in their mind. The other thing to keep in mind is high levels of stress reduce focus. I liked the illustration that that was brought up by the presenter in how emotions impact learning. The example that if a spider creates a great deal of fear for you, the presence of a spider in your learning environment is going to reduce your focus. You're going to focus on that spider until that spider is resolved, and then you will branch out from there. Next, another inhibitor is poor sleep. So poor sleep can really inhibit brain function. It doesn't allow for, and when you don't get good sleep, it doesn't allow that sleep process, as Travis Bradbury mentions in his video, to kind of purify the brain from some of those negative chemicals that can inhibit growth. Caffeine is another inhibitor. So as Travis Bradbury mentions, it can it can help to increase levels of cortisol, and it also compounds things by disrupting your normal sleep patterns. So what this means for students, so emotional intelligence isn't static. It can grow and develop over their time in the classroom. It isn't. It's a high predictor of success. If this is something that we can encourage in our students and cause to grow, we can help their level of success increase in the future. We need to remember that it's influenced most by their environment. So as teachers, we want to create supportive environments. We can, as teachers, support their emotional intelligence by creating safe environments and doing everything we can to support that emotional intelligence growth. So my takeaways, support one-on-one help for students as much as possible. Adult one-on-one help is a key thing that can help emotional intelligence. Create a safe and reliable environment for learning. Make sure students aren't worried about that hot button. They can focus on the learning. And work to exemplify the traits that support emotional intelligence. Be a good example of growing in emotional intelligence and being an encourager, which I think in general is just a good takeaway for teachers to just remember to continually speak positivity and growth to your students. Thank you, and talk again soon.